They kicked me out when I was 15, just handed me a backpack, shut the door, and told me not to come back unless I had straight A's and a real future. Well, I didn't come back with straight A's. I came back with a six-figure business and a quiet fire they never saw coming. But let's rewind. My name's Eli Navarro. I'm 27 now, but back then, I was just a confused, angry kid growing up in a small New Jersey suburb, the disappointment in a traditional, high-pressure Filipino family. My parents? Nina and Ramon, immigrants who came to America with big dreams, old values, and a parenting style best described as grades or bust. And bust, I did. My older sister, Laura, was the blueprint. Star student, piano competitions, debate team captain, you know the type. She got gold stars and bubble tea. I got side eyes and laminated report cards shoved in my face as inspiration. The funny part? I wasn't even failing at first. Elementary school, I actually held my own. Math trophies, spelling bees, the occasional good job sticker from Miss Thompson. But as soon as Laura hit high school and started pulling in those A+, like they were Pokemon cards, I became the underachiever. They didn't even try to hide the disappointment. Every report card turned into a courtroom trial. They'd dig out Laura's straight A archive, slap it next to mine, and ask me deadpan, "What's wrong with you?" Let me tell you something nothing screws with a kid's brain faster than being told they're defective for getting a B in history. The punishment started small. Grounded for a weekend, no dessert, fewer hours of TV. Then it escalated: no birthday party, no sleepovers, no games. Eventually, they took my entire childhood hostage and replaced it with flashcards and guilt trips. At one point, I wasn't even allowed to eat dinner until I finished an approved study quota. I wish I was joking. You'd think they were training me for med school. I was 13. But that's not what broke me. What broke me was the constant message that I was never enough. That no matter how hard I tried, I'd always be the mistake. And the more they drilled that in, the more I rebelled. I started skipping classes, leaving my test papers blank just to piss them off. I'd draw cartoon characters in the margins and write joke answers in the essays. Who discovered America? Probably someone who also disappointed their immigrant parents. Yeah, I was that kid. My parents were furious, but they didn't yell. Oh no, they weaponized silence. The cold, calculated kind that makes you feel like a ghost at your own dinner table. Then came the basement punishment. Every weekend they'd lock me down there with a desk and textbooks. No windows, no music, just fluorescent lights and suffocating expectations. It wasn't study time, it was solitary confinement. Ironically, their version of tough love gave me the one thing I'd never had before: time to think. And I started thinking about escape. Not just physically though, God, I wanted out, but mentally, emotionally, I started dreaming up worlds where I wasn't worthless, where I could use my strengths instead of faking theirs. Turns out I had a gift for sales. When they dragged me to their small corner store to keep me out of trouble, I found something I actually enjoyed: talking to people, understanding what they needed, helping them find the right brand of rice or pain reliever or shampoo. I was good at it. Better than good, I was natural. That scared my parents. To them, retail was failure. Sales was a fallback, a last resort for people who didn't make it. When I told them I wanted to be a salesman one day, they looked at me like I'd announced I was joining a cult. Ramon pulled me aside, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You weren't born to sell soap, Eli. You were born to make this family proud." Funny how those two things never overlapped. Then came the final straw. Freshman year, I failed algebra. Full on, capital F failure. Didn't even bother pretending I studied for the exam. My teacher called home, and that night turned into the apocalypse. No dinner, no shouting, just an ultimatum. You're done here. I thought they were bluffing. What kind of parents throw their own kid out over a bad grade? Mine, apparently. They packed a bag with 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans, and a broken phone charger. Told me to go find my future since we clearly weren't providing one worth anything. The door closed, and I was gone. That first night? Brutal. I slept behind a 24-hour laundromat using my backpack as a pillow. I was 15. No ID, no money, no clue what to do. But also for the first time, I wasn't being told who'd be. I was free. The next morning, I wandered into downtown Jersey City. Started walking into every small store and restaurant with a simple pitch. I can sell anything. Give me one shot. Most laughed me off. A few told me to get lost. But by 4 p.m., I struck gold. It was a tiny cosmetic shop run by a sharp-tongued old lady named Denise. She didn't need a kid, but she was short-staffed and desperate. She handed me a customer who came in for a night cream and told me, "If you can get her to buy a $45 lipstick too, you're hired." I sold her 2. Denise didn't even smile, just nodded and said, "Okay, lipstick boy, you're in." That job saved me. She paid me in tips and let me crash in the supply room. I didn't have much, but I had purpose. And slowly, week by week, I built a life. I hopped jobs, learned tricks, took side gigs, built connections, said yes to everything that helped me grow. By the time I was 21, I was ready. I launched my own company, a sales consultancy for small businesses. We help brands close deals, set up storefronts, and turn browsers into buyers. It was scrappy at first. Just me, my laptop, and 2 friends who believed in my pitch. We worked out of a co-working space and took calls in coffee shops. But hustle has a compounding effect. Fast forward to now, I run a 50-person team that helps over 70 companies generate real revenue. We've got clients in tech, health, food, you name it. I'm not bragging, but yeah, I'm pulling in 6 figures a month, sometimes more. And here's the kicker. Last week, my mom followed me on Instagram. Then she liked every single post going back 3 years. Yeah, even the one where I'm on a boat in Mykonos with my girlfriend sipping champagne. Coincidence? I think not. She messaged me too. Eli, we're so proud of you. Come home sometime. We miss you. I left her on read. But something stirred inside me. Revenge? Maybe. Or closure. Or just a craving to finally say out loud what's been burning inside me for a decade. Because now I get to decide how the story ends. When I finally responded to my mom's message, I didn't say much. Just a single word. Maybe. I wasn't sure why I replied at all. Maybe part of me wanted to see if they'd changed. Maybe I was curious how they'd act now that I had something they clearly wanted, a life that didn't need them. Either way, I told myself it wasn't forgiveness. It was recon. A scouting trip. I didn't tell anyone except my girlfriend Nadia, and even she didn't love the idea. She knew what my family had done. She knew the stories, the basement punishments, the public shame, the silence after they kicked me out like garbage. You're not going to get the closure you think you will, she warned. This isn't about peace. It's about pride. Don't let them rewrite your pain just because you made it. I told her I wasn't looking for closure. I just wanted to see their faces when they realized I became everything they said I couldn't. So I drove back to the neighborhood I used to hate. Same cracked sidewalks. Same smell of fried food from that sketchy chicken spot at the corner. The house looked smaller than I remembered, like time had shrunk it. I knocked twice. My mom opened the door like she'd been standing behind it the whole time. Eli, she said, like it was my name and not a question. She looked older, tired, but still in that way too, perfect house dress, hair clipped back, as if she wanted to prove she had it all together. I stepped in. The air smelled like garlic and furniture polish. A weird mix of welcome and warning. My sister Laura was already on the couch, hands folded like a guest in her own home. She gave me a small nod but didn't say anything. I hadn't seen her in nearly 10 years. Her eyes looked dull. The spark she used to have, the one that made her the golden child, was gone. Mom brought out food like this was a celebration. Lumpia, adobo, steamed rice, stacked high like she was trying to feed the guilt away. I didn't eat. I just sat down and asked, "So why now?" My mom played innocent. "What do you mean?" "I wasn't in the mood. You cut me off for getting bad grades. Now I'm successful and suddenly we're family again? Just be honest." She tried to laugh it off, but it was shaky. "We were strict, yes, but it was because we cared. Your father, he was raised that way. We thought it was the only way to push you." I looked at Laura. She stared at her plate. I turned back to Mom. "Don't act like this was just Dad's plan. You enforced it. You locked me in a basement and called it discipline." She sighed, this dramatic kind of sigh like she wanted pity. "You don't understand what it was like raising 2 kids in a country that wasn't ours. We didn't have time to be soft." I leaned forward, voice calm but sharp. "No, you didn't have time to see that grades aren't the same as worth. And when I didn't meet your definition of success, you dumped me." She looked wounded, but I didn't stop. "You want a relationship now, but what you want is to be part of my success. You want credit without the investment." That's when Laura finally spoke. "They didn't just do it to you." Her voice was soft but heavy, like it had been waiting for a reason to exist. I turned to her. She avoided my eyes. "I did everything they asked. Got straight A's, got into college, got my master's. And I still can't find a job. I can't talk to people. I choke during interviews. I don't know how to be around anyone. All I ever did was study." I wasn't sure how to respond. For years, I'd thought of Laura as the golden one, the favorite, the one who had it all handed to her. But sitting there, hearing her talk like that, it hit me. She was just a different kind of prisoner. While I was punished for failing, she was groomed to be perfect and left to rot when perfection didn't pay off. Our parents didn't raise kids, they raised projects. I asked her what she wanted now. She shrugged. To feel normal, to be okay. It was strange. All these years, I resented her. Now, I just felt sorry. Not in a pitying way, but in the way you feel when you realize someone else survived the same storm but was left with different wounds. Mom tried to shift the conversation. We're a family. That's what matters now. I smiled. You think family's enough after what happened? She clasped her hands together. It's never too late to come back home. That's when I laughed. It wasn't loud, just quiet and sharp. You didn't leave the door open. You slammed it shut. And now you're surprised that I don't want to stand on your porch forever. She asked about my life, my business, how I got where I am. I gave her just enough, not everything. She wouldn't have understood the details anyway. To her, unless I was working in a hospital or sitting behind a corporate desk with a nameplate, it wasn't real. I mentioned I had a team, offices, contracts. Her eyes lit up like dollar signs. That's amazing, she said, voice syrupy. You always had potential. We just had to be hard on you to bring it out. I nearly stood up, but I didn't. I kept my tone cool. No, you crushed me, and I had to rebuild myself from the ground up. You didn't bring anything out, you buried me. I just clawed my way back. She flinched. Laura stayed silent. The rest of the visit was fake smiles and awkward glances. I didn't stay for dinner. As I left, Mom hugged me like she was trying to erase history with a gesture. Come back soon, she said. We want to do a family dinner. Just us and a few relatives. Everyone wants to see how far you've come. There it was. The real reason, not connection, not reconciliation. A photo op, a trophy son for the extended family to applaud so she could pretend she raised a success story. I told her I'd think about it. She beamed like she'd already won. I walked out, but I didn't drive away right away. I sat in the car and stared at that house. Same bricks, same door, same windows. But now it felt like a museum full of artifacts and ghosts, not people. I called Nadia. How'd it go? She asked. I told her the truth. Exactly how you said. They want to wear my success like a badge. And they think a hug can erase 10 years of silence. She didn't say anything for a second. Then, you okay? I thought about that. Was I? I wasn't angry. Not in the way I used to be. But I wasn't healed either. What I felt was more dangerous calculated. I told Nadia I was going to accept the dinner invite. She hesitated. Eli, I cut her off. Don't worry. I'm not going back to be their son. I'm going back as the man they tried to break. And this time, they're going to hear the whole story from my mouth, in front of every person they're trying to impress. Nadia paused, then exhaled, then burn it down. Just don't burn yourself with it. I promised her I wouldn't. Because this wasn't revenge out of anger, this was clarity, a performance, one final act. The family dinner wasn't going to be a reunion, it was going to be my stage. And they had no idea what was coming. When the day of the dinner finally arrived, I wasn't nervous, not anxious, not even angry, just sharp, focused, like someone walking into a meeting where they already knew the outcome. I didn't wear a suit or anything fancy, no designer watch, no shiny shoes. I showed up in a hoodie, clean but casual, the same one I wore when I first signed my first client contract 6 years ago. I wanted to wear it like armor, a reminder of who I really was and who I had to become to get here. I showed up 2 hours late, on purpose. Texted my mom earlier that I'd be there. Didn't give a reason why I'd be late, just let her stew in the silence. That alone probably triggered every last nerve in her body. I knew her too well. She wasn't worried I wouldn't come. She was worried I'd come and ruin the narrative she was already setting for the guests. The dinner was held at this rooftop restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the menus are in cursive and the portions are microscopic. My parents had reserved the entire patio space. There were fairy lights strung overhead, tables perfectly arranged, centerpieces with gold accented orchids. They wanted a celebration, something they could talk about at church the next day, or post about with long captions that conveniently left out a decade of silence. As soon as I walked in, I felt the shift. Conversations died down, heads turned. My mom stood up fast, her smile a little too wide, arms outstretched like we hadn't spent 10 years apart. There he is, she said, as if I were the guest of honor and not the kid they tossed into the cold because I failed algebra. I walked up, hugged her briefly, and nodded at my dad, who gave me a stiff handshake and one of those forced smiles that doesn't quite reach the eyes. He'd aged, but not in the graceful kind of way. More like someone who spent years being quietly bitter and still didn't know how to let it go. The guests were already seated. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even old neighbors. Some smiled genuinely. Others just looked confused, like they'd only heard whispers about me and weren't sure what version of the story was true. I took my seat intentionally at the far end of the table, away from my parents. My mom didn't like that. I saw it in the way her lips twitched, before she smoothed out her expression. Food was being served, drinks were flowing, and the atmosphere was thick with awkward pleasantries. My dad stood up first, tapping his glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. He cleared his throat and gave a short speech about how proud they were of me, how far I'd come, how I'd always been ambitious, even as a kid. He laughed like it was some warm, fuzzy joke, and not the reason I slept on a bench at 15. Then my mom stood beside him and started piling on compliments. How I was proof that hard parenting worked, how they pushed me, and look where I ended up. She talked about how sacrifice and discipline led me to success, and how proud they were to see me fulfilling the family legacy. That was the moment. The exact point where I decided I wasn't going to sit through a curated fairy tale. I stood up, calmly, no theatrics, just enough that the room fell quiet. I looked directly at my mother and said, "It's interesting how you left out the part where you threw me out of the house because I failed math." Silence. The kind that hangs heavy and doesn't go away quickly. She blinked, tried to smile again, but it faltered. My dad had opened his mouth to say something, but I held up a hand. "Let me talk." And I did. I told the truth, not in a rage, not with drama, just plainly. I told them how I slept outside for weeks, how I worked my way into sales from nothing, how I taught myself everything because I had no one. I explained how every success I had was not because of their parenting but in spite of it, how they punished me for being different instead of helping me grow. I talked about the basement, the food deprivation, the isolation. I watched the room absorb it like a slap to the face. Some looked stunned. A few looked away. An uncle whispered something to his wife. One of my younger cousins had tears in her eyes. Then I turned to my mom again. "You kicked out a teenager and expected him to return with a degree and a thank you card. What you raised me with wasn't discipline, it was fear. And now, after all this time, you want credit because I built a life without you." My voice never rose. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I just stood there, steady, and watched as every false story they'd ever told about our family cracked in front of them. Laura stood up too. She didn't speak much, but she said just enough. She told them how she never learned to connect with anyone because all she knew was study, grades, and expectations. How even after doing everything they wanted, she still felt broken. "I'm not successful. I'm scared of interviews. I can't talk to people. I did everything right, and I still failed." The room was dead silent. Our parents stood frozen, like they just realized this wasn't a dinner, it was an intervention. Then my outspoken Aunt Dad's sister chimed in, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Didn't you throw him out? Why are you acting like you raised a CEO?" That broke something. My mom's face went pale. My dad tried to laugh it off, but no one joined in. And then I dropped the final piece. "I'm not here to heal anything. I came to set the record straight. You don't get to decorate my story with flowers when you watered it with rejection." I sat back down. No one moved for a moment. My mom finally spoke, voice trembling. "We were scared. We thought we were doing the right thing." I nodded, slow and deliberate. "You might have been scared, but that doesn't make what you did right." My sister took my hand. She looked lighter, like something inside her had finally loosened after years of being wound tight. The dinner ended early. Some people left quietly. Others came over and whispered how sorry they were. My parents didn't speak again. Not to me, not to anyone. They just stood there, faces stunned, masks cracked. And I didn't feel guilty, not even a little, because for the first time I hadn't just survived them. I had confronted them. And not with rage, but with truth. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because sometimes the only way to heal is to make sure your silence is no longer protecting the people who hurt you. When I got home, Nadia was waiting on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her, eyes soft and searching. "How was it?" she asked. I sank into the seat beside her, let out a long breath. "It's done." She leaned on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, actually, I think I am." And I meant it, not because I wanted them to feel pain, but because I finally stopped carrying the weight of protecting their image. I gave it back, let them deal with the cracks. I had my own foundation now, and it was built on something real me. In the days that followed the dinner, I didn't hear from my parents. Not a single call or text, and honestly, I didn't expect one. I had dismantled their illusion in front of their entire social circle, shattered the image they'd worked so hard to polish. It wasn't about making them feel bad, it was about ending the lie, and lies don't survive in bright light. What I didn't expect, though, was how quickly word traveled. Apparently, within 48 hours, versions of the dinner story were echoing through group chats, Facebook threads, even the church bulletin board. Relatives started messaging me directly. Some apologized. Some shared their own stories, quietly, in low tones, like we were all members of the same club. A few cousins even reached out, just to say they always wondered what happened to me. Turns out I wasn't just erased, I was edited out. My parents didn't tell people they'd thrown me out. They told everyone I had run away, that I was ungrateful, troubled, addicted to video games and bad influences. They left out the part where they kicked me to the curb over a report card. I guess reality didn't fit the hero-parent narrative. What surprised me most was Laura. She started texting me more often after the dinner. Nothing heavy, just little updates, questions, sometimes just a meme. I could tell she was trying, and I didn't mind. For once, it felt like we were relating without the invisible wall of parental comparison between us. She even asked if we could meet up for coffee. I agreed. We sat in this quiet cafe near her apartment. She looked different, not just physically, but in presence. Lighter somehow. More grounded. Like, for the first time in years, she wasn't holding her breath. She told me she started seeing a career coach. Nothing big, just baby steps. I could tell she wasn't sure if it would work, but the fact that she was even trying meant something. She asked me again about my business, how it started, what I actually do day to day. I gave her the rundown, the cold calling, the client pitches, the late nights figuring out systems that didn't exist when I started. Her eyes lit up in this way I hadn't seen since we were kids, and used to play make-believe. I offered her a part-time admin role, something light, no pressure, just a foot in the door. She hesitated, then said yes. It felt good, not just to help her, but to know I wasn't building a life alone anymore. That someone who'd grown up in the same storm could finally walk beside me, not behind or ahead, just side by side. But while Laura and I were figuring out how to reconnect as actual people, our parents were on their own mission, and I should have known they wouldn't go down quietly. A week after the dinner, I got an email. Not from them, but from a cousin, Anton. He sent me screenshots of texts from my mother, asking him to help her rebuild family unity and reach out to me. The messages were full of flattery, phrased like a political speech. She wrote things like, "He's such an accomplished man now. We're proud but don't know how to approach him without upsetting him further." Upsetting me? Like I was some fragile vase instead of the one who got thrown out with the trash? But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. They were fishing for sympathy now, trying to find someone to convince me they were trying their best. The irony was rich. Spend years ignoring my humanity, then cry about not being let back into my life when the cameras are off. Then came the dinner invitation. Another one. This time a more formal one. A printed card, hand-delivered to my office, like I was some kind of visiting diplomat. Inside it said, "We invite you to a private family celebration to honor Eli Navarro and the values that shaped him." I read that line twice. Laughed once. The values that shaped me? Was that what we were calling abandonment now? I showed Nadia the card when I got home. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "They want credit," she said, and I nodded. "They want control," I added. And we were both right. This wasn't about reconnecting. This was damage control. The first dinner had spiraled into gossip, and now they wanted to host a new one to overwrite the memory. A photo op with smiles, and maybe a video toast they could post online. I tossed the invite on the kitchen counter. Nadia picked it up and set it aside. "You thinking of going?" she asked. I shrugged. Part of me wants to, but only if I get to write the script, this time. I didn't RSVP, but a few days later, my dad texted me directly, the first message in over 10 years. It read, "Let's talk. Just you and me. Coffee?" The first stared at the message for a full 5 minutes. Not because I was moved, but because I knew exactly what was happening. They weren't getting the validation they wanted, so now he was coming in with the solo play. The father-son connection card. I met him, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I wanted to see how far he'd go to rewrite history. We met at a quiet diner, the kind with booths and burnt coffee. He was already seated when I arrived, looking smaller than I remembered. Less like the man who used to thunder commands through the house and more like someone just tired of carrying the mask. He tried small talk. I didn't bite. Eventually, he got to the point. "Your mother and I, we didn't handle things well. We thought we were doing what was right. And I know you don't owe us anything, but we'd like a chance to fix things." I sipped my coffee, leaned back. Fix what exactly? He fumbled a bit, looked down at his hands. The family, the relationships, all of it. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "I didn't break anything, you did. And now that I've made something of myself, you want to be part of it again." He started to say no, to deny it, but I cut him off. "You kicked me out when I was 15, Dad. You didn't just ground me, you didn't just scold me, you removed me. And now you want to act like it was a timeout?" He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just sat there, eyes low. I wasn't trying to humiliate him. I just wanted the truth to sit in the air without being buried under apologies that came a decade too late. After a while, he said something I didn't expect. "Your mom's not doing well." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "Her blood pressure's been up. She's not sleeping." She's been having panic attacks. I blinked slowly. So this dinner is about her, not me. He didn't respond. That told me everything. This wasn't about healing, it was about managing guilt, repackaging it into a celebration so she could sleep at night. I stood up, dropped a few bills on the table. I'm not doing your PR, I walked out. But I knew deep down they weren't done yet, that there'd be one more push. And I was right. 2 days later, Laura called. She sounded nervous. They're adding me to the business account, she said quietly. Dad said it's a way to help me feel independent. I paused. That's great, right? She hesitated. It is. But he also said they want to show how supportive they've been of both their children. Like, on paper. I exhaled. They're prepping for another narrative. She agreed. And they want me to give a speech at the dinner. There it was. The final trap. Rebuild their image through her safe, sweet Laura. I asked her if she was going to do it. She didn't answer right away. Then said, only if I get to say whatever I want. That's when I knew. They'd set the stage, but they weren't the ones controlling the script anymore. We were. And if they insisted on another dinner, then fine, we'd show up. But this time, it wouldn't be for them, it would be for us. For the version of our story that never got to breathe in public. The truth was coming, and no amount of floral centerpieces or sugar-coated speeches could cover it up. The second dinner didn't have the same glitter. It wasn't at a rooftop restaurant this time. They booked a private hall at a mid-tier banquet venue. Dim lights, neutral tablecloths, generic playlists, the kind of setting that tried to look formal without committing. It was obvious they were trying to scale it down, maybe to avoid another scene, or maybe because the first event had eaten through more of their dignity and money than expected. But they still had an agenda. You could feel it. Everything felt rehearsed, from the warm smiles of the relatives to the carefully scripted lines dropped in casual conversation. They weren't here to connect. They were here to witness a rewrite, a rebranding of the family name, one polite toast at a time. Nadia and I arrived late again. Not out of spite, just consistency. This time I wasn't dressed casually. I wore a black dress shirt, neat slacks, minimal watch. Just enough to remind the room that I belonged here, but on my own terms. Laura had already arrived. She stood near the front of the room, looking more composed than I'd ever seen her. No shaking hands, no eyes darting, just calm. She saw me and gave a quick nod. I nodded back, no words needed. The event kicked off with the usual pleasantries. Appetizers passed around, toasts clinking, my parents floating between tables, greeting everyone with perfectly modulated charm. But even from across the room, I could see the tension in my mother's jaw. The way she kept glancing at her watch, then at the mic stand set up near the small podium. They were waiting for something, or rather for someone to say something. Sure enough, right after the main course, my father walked up to the mic. He cleared his throat, straightened his back, and smiled like he'd practiced it in the mirror 100 times. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began, voice smooth, words deliberate. We are gathered not just to celebrate success, but the strength of family, the values that anchor us, and the future we build together. I nearly rolled my eyes. The man who hadn't spoken to me in a decade was now quoting Hallmark cards like nothing happened. He continued, talking about hard work, resilience, tradition, all of it laced with implication, like I was some byproduct of their wisdom, a seed that had sprouted under their careful watch. I said nothing. I watched. Then came the moment they had clearly staged. My father invited Laura to the stage to say a few words. I could tell he thought this was the safest move. Laura, the compliant one, the straight, a student, the one who never raised her voice. He handed her the mic with a smile like he'd already read her speech. But she hadn't shown it to anyone, not even me. She stepped up, took a breath, and then she spoke. Her voice was steady, clear. I want to thank everyone for coming. It means a lot to be surrounded by people who say they care about our family. The room nodded, murmured polite agreement. Then she shifted. But I'd like to take this moment not to repeat what's already been said, but to tell the truth. The air changed. My mother tensed. My father froze. Laura continued, not loud, not emotional, just firm. Most of you know me as the quiet daughter, the one who did well in school, who followed the rules, who never gave anyone trouble. But what you don't know is that I did all of that not because I was loved for who I was, but because I was terrified of what would happen if I wasn't perfect. You could hear Forks stop midair. She didn't pause. I spent my entire childhood chasing approval from parents who never gave it freely. Every grade, every award, every book I buried myself in was a bid for love I never felt. And when my brother, Eli, didn't match that same mold, they punished him. Not with scoldings or grounding, but with rejection. They erased him, My mother stood up then, tried to interrupt, but Laura kept going. No, Mom, you had your version. This one is ours. Silence again, this time heavier. You kicked him out because he failed a class. You told people he ran away. And when he built a life without you, you showed up not to make amends, but to wear his success like a badge you didn't earn. I looked at her and saw a version of my sister I'd never met before. Not the silent achiever, not the obedient daughter, but someone brave, someone done being polite. She turned to face the room. We're not saying this to shame our parents. We're saying it because truth deserves a seat at this table too. Eli didn't become successful because of this family. He did it in spite of it. And I'm only just starting to unlearn the fear that was handed to me as love. Some guests looked down, others looked stunned. A few nodded, quietly supportive. My aunt, the one who'd called out my parents at the last dinner, gave Laura a soft clap. It wasn't much, but it was enough. My mother finally spoke, her voice shaking. Laura, we didn't know. We tried our best. But Laura shook her head. No, you tried to control everything. And when we broke out of that control, you called it rebellion instead of growth. She walked off the stage, handed the mic to no one, and sat beside me. The room stayed quiet. My dad tried to salvage the night, forcing a laugh, saying something about families needing to work through their differences. But the damage was done. This wasn't about a difference in opinion. This was about years of emotional neglect, being aired like laundry they'd tried to hide. I stood up, not to give a speech, but to thank Lara. I leaned in and whispered, "You didn't just speak for you. You spoke for both of us." She smiled, and for the first time, it looked real. The event fizzled out after that. People left early. Conversations grew short. The small talk dried up. My parents stayed behind, talking to a few of their closest friends, spinning whatever narrative they could salvage. As we drove home, Nadia reached over and squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I looked out the window, watched the lights blur past. "I am. For the first time in a long time, I really am." We didn't say much after that. We didn't have to. The truth had been spoken. The masks had fallen, and nothing could be undone. Laura texted me later that night. Just 3 words. "I'm with you." And I believed her. Not just because she said it, but because she'd proven it when it mattered most. My parents haven't reached out since, and I doubt they will anytime soon, because you can't undo exposure with silence. And you can't rebuild a bridge you burned and blamed the wind for. It's been almost 4 months since the second dinner. I haven't heard from my parents, not a word. No calls, no texts, no carefully crafted messages passed through relatives. And that silence, for once, isn't empty. It's peace. Not the kind you fight for, or beg for, or sit in therapy hoping to one day reach. It's the kind you feel when you finally stop chasing a version of love that was never yours to earn in the first place. It's weird, really. I used to think closure would come with an apology, a confession, a moment of sudden clarity where they'd realize what they'd done and fall into my arms with guilt and regret. But that's not how life works. Real closure comes when you stop needing anything from the people who hurt you, when you realize that healing isn't about them feeling sorry, it's about you feeling free. And I do. I feel free in a way that still surprises me on slow mornings and quiet drives. My story doesn't end with their approval. It never did. That was the trick. That was the lie I was raised on. Laura's doing better too. She took the part-time role at my company and turned it into something real. She still has her moments, days where the weight of old expectations creeps in, when she doubts her voice or hesitates in meetings. But every time she shows up and keeps going, she chips away at years of silence they built around her. She's not just working. She's learning to speak up, to be messy, to be loud, to exist outside the tight lines she was raised in. Watching her grow feels like watching a garden bloom, where there was once only concrete. We talk almost every day now, sometimes about work, sometimes about the past, sometimes about nothing at all, but it's never forced, never transactional. It's just real. That's more family than I've ever known. As for me, the business is thriving. We've signed 2 new clients. In the last month alone, 1 in tech, 1 in education. I've hired 5 more people, expanded our office, reinvested in training, culture, systems. I've created something I'm proud of, not just because of the revenue or growth, but because it came from nothing but grit, instinct, and the kind of hunger only rejection can sharpen. The irony is, the very traits my parents tried to beat out of me, curiosity, defiance, independence, those were the ones that saved me. I didn't follow their path. I built my own. And that path is wide enough now to bring others with me. I'm not just running a company. I'm mentoring kids who remind me of who I used to be. The ones who struggle in school, who don't fit the mold, who've been told they're not enough. I teach them sales, communication, strategy, but more than that, I show them that there are 1,000 ways to build a future. And grades? They're not the map, they're just one tool. That, more than any number in a bank account, makes me feel rich. Nadia and I are talking about moving somewhere quieter, maybe something with a bit of land, a garden, a view of the sunrise. She wants chickens. I'm not sure I'm ready for chickens, but I'm ready for something different. A space that isn't haunted by old footsteps or old fears. A home that doesn't have to be rebuilt every time I remember what mine used to be. We talk about the future often not with pressure, not with deadlines. Just curiosity, just honesty. She's the first person who never asked me to prove my worth. And that alone made me want to give her everything. We're not in a rush. We're just building day by day like we always have. There was a moment last week that stuck with me. I was at the grocery store. Yeah, a real one this time, not my parents' old corner shop. I walked past a father and his kid, maybe 8 or 9, doing math on his fingers, trying to figure out how much change they'd get back. The dad didn't correct him harshly. He just smiled and said, "Close. Try again." No shame, no anger, just patience. And something about that small, quiet moment hit me in a place I didn't know was still bruised. I realized then that I wouldn't raise my kids the way I was raised. I wouldn't use fear as a motivator. I wouldn't weaponize love and call it discipline. If I ever have a child, and I hope I do, I want them to know from day one that they never have to earn my acceptance. It's theirs, by default, no matter what. Sometimes I think about what I'd say if my parents ever reached out again. If they showed up on my doorstep with trembling voices and watery eyes, saying they'd changed, that they were sorry, that they finally understood. But honestly, I don't think I'd let them in. Not out of bitterness, not out of spite, but because I've spent too long cleaning up their mess from my soul to let it back in the door. Forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. And healing doesn't require an audience. I've forgiven them in a way. But that doesn't mean they get a seat at my table. That table is reserved now for people who show up, who stay, who don't disappear when you stop being easy to manage. I'm not perfect. I'm still unlearning things, still working through the occasional anger that sneaks in when I hear someone talk about their loving childhood without hesitation, still catching myself bracing for criticism that isn't coming. But I'm better, not healed all the way, but healing. And maybe that's enough, maybe that's everything. Because this life I've built, it's not about proving anyone wrong anymore. It's about proving myself right. That I was always capable, always worthy, always enough. Some nights I lie awake and replay it all. The basement, the bench, the first lipstick I sold, the first paycheck I held in shaking hands, the look on my mom's face when I told the truth in front of the people she wanted to impress, the way Laura stood up beside me, the silence afterward, the freedom, and I smile, not because it was easy, but because I made it out. And not just out, I made it up. Past the limits they gave me, past the labels they stuck on me, past the shame they buried me under. If I could go back and talk to that kid 15, heart cracked open, backpack on, trying not to cry as the door slammed behind him, I wouldn't tell him it gets easier. I'd tell him it gets real. That it's going to hurt. That he'll doubt himself 1,000 times. That people will try to rewrite his story. But I'd also tell him that one day he'll stop surviving and start living. That he'll build something no one can take from him. That he'll find love not just from others but from within. That he'll turn his wounds into wisdom and his pain into power. And that one day he'll write the ending not with anger, not with revenge, but with grace. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't payback, it's peace. And I finally found mine. Story 2. In order to get a promotion, the best friend boasted about cheating on her spouse. After I exposed her, she lost her job and her boastful boyfriend broke up with her. My soon-to-be ex-best friend and I have been friends since middle school. We are fully aware of one another. These days, our families are essentially one large family, you understand. We tell each other everything, like I mentioned. She recently told me that she and her supervisor at her new work had been having an affair for around 4 months. She informed me that she began using her app to pretend to be on a work trip around a year ago, not out of guilt, but to boast about the amazing holiday she was on. She requested that I cover for her in the event that her husband inquires about our communication, because she intends to go black for that week, making it impossible for him to find out. Side note, we've both known her husband since high school. They have been together for over 15 years since they fell in love in high school. Her spouse is one of the most sincere, honest, and industrious individuals I've ever met. Since he trusts her more than he trusts himself, He naturally took what she said about working late on the business trip at face value. Since I couldn't even look at her at the moment, I informed her to leave my house and that I wouldn't be filling in for her. My husband was equally as startled and appalled when I later told him everything that had transpired. He naturally feels a great deal of devotion to her spouse, who is now essentially his best friend. My husband pointed out something I didn't even think of. Everything was captured by our security camera. Tonight, we want to present the evidence to her husband. He will be free to use it any way he pleases. However, he is entitled to know. Second, we're bringing this up at work. To the best of my knowledge, her place of employment forbids fraternization of any type. This same boss also gave her a promotion once. Thus, this can be interpreted as partiality. We predict that both of them will lose their jobs. In conclusion, I will forward a little excerpt of her confessing the affair to her entire family, including mine. Our families are closely related, as I mentioned. Thus, I will have little trouble getting in touch with most of her relatives. I won't allow her to use this as an excuse to attack her husband or me. I vehemently disagree with the notion that this is harsh. She is working on a minor update. Everyone who is involved. Your best pal, Alyssa. Noah's best friend hub, I made the decision to follow some people's advice and get in touch with Alyssa before approaching her husband. For my own safety, I told her I was recording the conversation. She continued to act very casually about the situation. I expressed my concern for her, and even for her, this behavior was completely out of character. In summary, she has felt extremely weak and out of balance in her marriage to Noah. For comparison, Alyssa was earning just over minimum wage prior to her promotion, while Noah attended a trade school and now earns a very good living. She has recently been reading up on some anti-traditional values, and the women in those forums attacked her for making less than her husband. She went on to say that her online friends advised her to take advantage of her supervisor's attempts to flirt with her in order to advance in her career. Naturally, she did, but she also acknowledged that she had grown emotionally attached to him. Overall, she acknowledged that she doesn't really regret the affair because it helped her find love and advance her career. I told her she had the option to tell Noah the truth before me, but hubby and I were coming over tonight with the video of her admitting the affair, so she wouldn't be able to sway it in her favor again. She very nonchalantly said, "Okay," and hung up on me. What the heck is going on? I can't tell if she's having some sort of psychosis, or she's literally just so detached from her marriage that she doesn't care what happens. Hubby and I still plan on going to Noah tonight, but I'm honestly intrigued to see that she says to him, if she says anything at all. Update 1. Apologize for not having time last night. We were obviously busy people involved, ex-bestie Alyssa, bestie's hubby Noah. I took a lot of people's advice and decided not to go nuclear as many people said. At the end of the day, it's not my circus. The decision should be left up to the wrong party, and that is Noah. I also decided to reach out to Alyssa before telling Noah, and decided to give her a chance to confess to Noah herself. After I talked to her, I was legit thinking about reaching out to her parents about medical help, because she was so unbothered and so not remorseful about the affair that I thought she was having some sort of mental break or psychosis. Yes. Alyssa has always been the kind to find loopholes or ways ahead, but cheating on your spouse of almost 2 decades for financial gain, it's not normal. If you didn't see my small update, the whole reason Alyssa started the affair was to get the promotion at work. It evolved into an emotional affair. Eventually, though, she admitted that her new friends from some feminism forums and Facebook groups told her she wasn't as valuable if she was making significantly less than her spouse. Something I learned she's been more insecure about than she's been telling people. They also told her that using a man isn't cheating as long as there's no emotional attachment. She's just being a girl boss. She admitted she couldn't separate her feelings from the intimate aspect and started going on regular dates and vacations, and eventually they started calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. The AP knows she's married, but was told they were on the verge of separation. My hubby and I arrived at Noah and Alyssa's with some booze and some dinner, and by the time we were there, Noah had already gone through a bottle of wine. Surprisingly, Alyssa did confess to Noah about the affair. He told us it was extremely not apologetic, though. She sat him down and told him that she wasn't going on a business trip this week. She was going on a vacation with her boyfriend Noah, being the clueless and loyal person he is. Thought he meant to say husband and was so excited. He questioned whether they're heading to Italy like that plan for, and Alyssa simply gazed at him. She repeated with my boyfriend. It took a few minutes, but it eventually sunk in. He told us it wasn't pretty after that, and stated he awkwardly went on his knees and begged her to mend things. She shouted for a moment, but then just stonewalled him again. she was fully prepared to depart and simply left in there weeping. She switched off her location, which both Noah and I were a member of her family on the app, and we had no idea where she went. We presumed she went to her house because if she had gone home with 2 luggage, her mother would have called out to Noah immediately. She regards him like a son. We sat down with Noah and stated we had video and audio proof of Alyssa revealing and explaining the affair, and we will provide them to him in case he needs them. I told to him that in a moment of blind wrath, I was planned on going scorched earth and informing everyone. But as I cooled down and looked at this objectively, I knew that wasn't the correct thing to do. The only person going full nuclear would harm was him, because Alyssa plainly doesn't care anymore. As I predicted, the thought of reconciliation is still on his mind, but he doesn't see it occurring. Admitting guilt and wanting to make amends are prerequisites for reconciliation. Alyssa certainly doesn't. We've put him in touch with my husband's buddy, who has agreed to provide pro-gratis assistance until the divorce proceedings are over. Although he is aware that he cannot make Alyssa stay, I can tell he is still apprehensive about proceeding with the divorce. We bow out here, as comments have indicated. Of course, we will continue to stand behind Noah, but it is his problem, not ours. You'll be the first to know if there are any updates in the future, but I'll ask Noah first. I appreciate all of your help and support. It helped me understand that Noah, not me, is in charge of how he manages his life and his marriage. The second update. Although I didn't anticipate returning so quickly, the past week has essentially been a fast-paced sequence of awful incidents. Feel free to consider this the end of the events, since this will likely be my final update. In particular, the last 2 days have been dreadfully awful, with everything that could have gone wrong happening. I apologize if this is everywhere. I suppose that was the day she went, or the day after since I'm still everywhere. However, AP and Alyssa took a vacation. She shared photos of herself and AP on social media, which is the only explanation I can think of. She was not ashamed at all. It was obvious that he was her new partner, even if she wasn't divorced. And naturally, her family was informed of the problems. Apologies were exploding on Noah's phone, accusing him of everything you could imagine. Instead of alerting everyone that she cheated, Noah, who is a people pleaser, chose to tell her family that they were taking a mutual break. That was the AP too. Luckily, Alyssa's mother didn't think he was telling the truth and came to me. I didn't hold back. I informed her that the only reason she came clean to Noah was because she recently boasted to me about her sugar daddy app, even though she had been cheating on him for months. Then, Alyssa's mother revealed something to me that I was unaware of. Alyssa is a chronic infidelity victim. According to her mother, Alyssa would bring males home from high school, pretending that they were for schoolwork or athletics, but she really saw her kissing 2 separate boys. Remember, she had been seeing Noah all along. She said that she didn't give it much thought and simply attributed it to being a hormonally unstable adolescent. She also said that she never thought she would wed her high school sweetheart, and that she assumed Alyssa had stopped doing all of this by the time they were married. Neither she nor I am aware of whether she has engaged in such behavior since high school, but I have no desire in learning more. This just clarifies why Alyssa was so casual about cheating, as it seems that she had always done it. Her girl boss friends must have awakened something inside of her, reminding her of how casually and easily she would cheat, and it motivated her to do it again. I'm not sure. To tell the truth, I kind of screamed something I'm not proud of at her mother. As I've mentioned in earlier entries, Alyssa's mother is essentially my mother, so when I speak with her, I don't consider etiquette or anything else. So I told her out of panic. "No, I'm up for this kind of life," she responded. She handled it like a pro and simply let me rant till I felt at ease again, even though he could have chosen someone 10 times better. I responded gently, "You and I both know no one deserved better, and apologize for shouting. Before he married her, you ought to have said something." She agreed, but added, "It's too late now to dwell on it," and that the primary thing at this moment was helping Noah. I said that she could have informed Noah that his fiancée had cheated on him 10 years prior and hung up on her if she wanted to show support for him. Since then, I have spoken with her. I was upset with her at the time, but we're all right now. Subsequently, a coworker received the images, and before their vacation was even ended, they were both unemployed. They were both fired because, as I anticipated, their employer was furious and did think that Alyssa was receiving preferential treatment for the promotion. It was obvious since Noah informed me that there had been at least 3 hours of complaints about them. Naturally, the lovely partnership. When he found out that Alyssa was the reason he lost his 6-figure job, he became resentful of her and her app. He even canceled Alice's plane ticket home out of spite and intended to leave her stuck there since he was so furious. You will all be let down at this moment, I am too. However, Noah purchased her a ticket, moved her back in, and forgave her right away. She informed him that it was simply a big mistake, and that she realized what she may have lost after witnessing the way her AP handled her. You already know that Noah ate that crap up, but my husband and I can see it clearly. Although it is obviously not an ultimatum, he has informed us that he is encouraging her to attend couples counseling. In other words, she was essentially allowed to have it both ways with no repercussions. We reminded Noah that we would be implementing at least minimal contact if he chose to take Alyssa back, as we had previously informed him. As promised, we have unblocked Noah and fully blocked Alyssa. However, we do not intend to engage in small talk in response to invitations to events. Since that's not usual, we won't follow his example and pretend that this never happened. We both somewhat understood and wished him well, but he insisted that he must honor the promises he made to his wife. Indeed, Alyssa was able to have sex with another guy, take a pleasant vacation, lose her job, and yet have a spouse and a bed when she returned home. If everything ends nicely, everything is okay. I'm not sure how to react to this. For example, they are free to continue living their dysfunctional, shattered marriage if they so want. I'm exhausted but not angry anymore. I don't know if I could handle this for months on end, so I'm almost relieved it's gone now. Eventually, I knew this would happen. It seems as foolish as it sounds, but that's simply who Noah is. At this stage, I start to ramble. I am happy that we made the decision to take a step back since, to be honest, neither of them would ever seek professional help for their obvious psychiatric problems. I would want to get rid of individuals like these. I apologize if this comes out as harsh or cruel, but in the end, I didn't sign up to deal with either of their problems. While my husband and I are trying for children, I don't need to be under this much stress. So, I suppose this is it, yes. Update 3, I haven't blogged in around a month? I had no intention of updating, but Alyssa and Noah's incident was the most amusing. I had to say something. Please be patient. The grapevine is the source of all this. I am still NC with them, as is the BC hub. First of all, Noah has given Alyssa another vacation as a reward for her infidelity. For their vow renewal, they intend to travel to Italy. Despite having been together for more than 15 years, they want to essentially start over in their marriage. When I heard this, I laughed uncontrollably. The fact that they will both try to hide this and pretend that their lives didn't fall apart just makes me laugh so hard. However, who am I to stop them if it brings them joy? Secondly, they have made the decision to try for a child. Being conservative and desiring to have no children was one thing that Alyssa and I always had in common. Neither of us had the impression that we would make good moms. Naturally, we were constantly essentially intimidated into changing our minds because we live in a community that is predominantly conservative and has conservative families. However, we despise one another. That's the crucial element. I kind of changed my mind about having children after meeting my husband, and we are currently attempting to conceive. Alyssa, however, never wavered. About 2 months have passed since our last discussion regarding her family's pressure to have children, a week or two prior to the instance of cheating. In addition to the fact that I think this is a bad idea, I can assure you that Alyssa will not love this child because they will grow up in a dysfunctional household. Now, I genuinely feel sorry for everyone concerned. Noah for believing that he must live with an unfaithful person, their future child for being born into this mess, and Alyssa for essentially making herself live a life she doesn't want to live. But yep, consider this the official end. When it becomes apparent that Noah has been parenting a child for someone else, I might return in a year or two. The next tale. Our daughter's kid was adopted by my wife and me. She is now also pregnant. Additionally, I recently learned that her father is actually my brother, who conceived her at a very early age. So, at the age of 22, my wife Rose, 53F, and I, 53AM, had our oldest daughter, Sarah, 31F. We were young and broke, but managed. And now we reared Sarah the best we could. At the age of 15, she became pregnant. She was going through a pretty dark period. She never informed us about the father, which constantly disturbed her, and she had to attend treatment. Thus, we never brought up the matter. After repeatedly canceling, she finally informed us that she intended to place her for adoption. However, when she was talking to a social worker about adopting a couple 5 months into her pregnancy, the couple decided to look for other couples and ended the adoption. Sarah inquired about our desire to adopt. When Sarah gave birth to our daughter Ellie at the age of 16, Rose and I, who were both 38 at this point, decided to adopt her as we had been talking about having another child. Ellie was 2 years later. Logan, our 13-year-old biological son, was born to my wife and me. We always intended to inform Ellie that she was adopted while we were growing up, but we realized that in order to do so, we would have to reveal that Sarah was her biological mother. Neither Sarah nor Akitas ever grew close to Ellie. Following the delivery, she moved out and took up residence with Rose's sister. She has always loved Logan like a sister, but she has never loved Ellie. Conflicting emotions have always existed with Sarah. There have been instances where Sarah shared a photo of the 5 of us on Instagram, but Ellie was left off. When I brought this up to her, she said it was too painful. She did, however, appear intoxicated a few years back and beg us to allow us to see her daughter. We spoke with her and let her to remain, but because she was intoxicated, we kept her away from Ellie. Her spouse informed us that she had experienced many miscarriages and was advised to look into using a surrogate. She eventually gave birth to twins, Jack and Jill, 4 years ago. Free the biologics, F and Emma, hers. Sarah has supported Ellie's enthusiasm of being the twins' aunt and has been asking her over to spend time with Logan, who also enjoys being an uncle. Given the twins and Ellie's proximity to them, we have asked Sarah if it wouldn't be time to tell Ellie the truth. However, Sarah continues to say she isn't prepared. Ellie recently informed us that she was expecting a child. The scenario is quite different this time. The father has been introduced to us. She and her childhood buddy, he, made the decision to end their virginity to one another. Like with Sarah, we had the conversation with Ellie a long time ago. We have subsequently visited with the father and his parents and are handling the matter gently. Ellie is adamant about keeping the child. Her pregnancy is 3 months along. Sarah hasn't been informed yet. We are unsure of how to handle the situation. How she will handle it, it is unknown to us. My wife and I are thinking about coming clean, but Sarah must be present. Update. Since I'm still receiving messages on this account, I thought I'd write in an update. I want to start by talking about the primary problem. After learning about my daughter, I was looking for suggestions on what to do. Although 15-year-old Ellie is pregnant, we experienced the same thing with her elder sister, Sarah, 31, who is Ellie's real mother. I made the decision to concentrate only on supporting Ellie, who is 4 months pregnant. We didn't want to stress her out by notifying her about the adoption yet. Indeed, we are aware that we ought to have informed her long ago. Even though Sarah feels strongly about the issue, we didn't even know all the specifics of Ellie's father. Sarah would have talked about that. As Ellie's parents, however, we still need to have been honest with her when she was younger. Ellie informed her family about the pregnancy a week after I published the story. After telling her boyfriend's grandparents and my parents, she naturally told Sarah. Despite her poor response, Sarah assured her that she would be there for her. Naturally, Sarah contacted us after becoming rather distraught, but she stated that she was prepared to discuss the adoption with Ellie first, and that she preferred to inform Ellie about her father in private. We had the conversation once we sat down. Naturally, Ellie was angry, but she eventually relaxed. Naturally, she had inquiries concerning her father. She and Sarah had that conversation. Back then, it was none of our concern, and I had no idea what she had been told. However, Ellie informed us she didn't want to get in touch since she knew who he was. After that, we went on. My brother's wife, Renee, 31F, my sister-in-law, called me the other day. She was furious and wanted to know what kind of bizarre thoughts Sarah was giving Ellie. She began to make references to Ellie's adoption. She then told me what had happened after I helped her to relax. According to her, Ellie messaged my 32-year-old brother Ethan to inform him of the adoption and to express her want to speak with him. I don't talk to Ethan very often, so this confused me. Since we are 21 years apart, we were never truly close. Ellie only saw him on holidays, so it didn't make sense to tell him about the specifics of her life. He was my mother's late child, and he always got along with our sisters and my children since they were all about the same age. According to what Renee told me, Ellie said that Ethan was her father, since Sarah had told her so, and informed him that he would soon become a grandfather. I had to spend some time sitting down. Sarah and I spoke for a while on the phone. She informed me that Ethan is indeed Ellie's biological father. When they were little, Sarah and Ethan were close. They were separated by just 8 months. Sarah claims that when they went, her thoughts about puberty altered, and that each time she visited her grandma, they would hide from everyone and spend time alone. Sarah was angry talking about this, but assured me that he never attacked her and that it was always consensual. She was embarrassed that her baby's father was her uncle, so she never wanted to tell me. Since then, I've also spoken with Ethan. He informed me it was real, but he denied it to Ellie by text. We spoke back and forth a few times. Even if it was agreed upon, how could he have a sexual relationship with his niece? I didn't hear that he had all of these. He was always aware of the pregnancy and that he was Ellie's father, but he never even bothered to speak out. I have talked to Ellie about it. She claimed to have been upset upon learning of it, but she always believed she resembled my stepdad's side of the family. When she said that, I was offended because, to be honest, I saw it. It's rather clear now. Since Ellie didn't resemble anybody on our side, I've always known that she preferred whatever her father was. However, I didn't suspect Ethan. Ethan informed Renee that it was real, and my mother and stepdad have learned about it. To be with her family, she departed with their children. Ellie has now made an attempt to contact Ethan, but I don't want her to talk to him. She still has me as her father, and I don't think she can trust him. Ellie hasn't expressed any desire to speak. When I questioned her about why she had contacted him before discussing it with Sarah or us, she replied that she felt deceived and only wanted to hear his side of the story. Story 3. On the day of my wedding, sister planned a fictitious anniversary celebration, and my parents decided to go until my grandfather threatened to remove them from his will. There's always been tension between my sister, who is 28F, and myself, who is 26F. Since we were little, our parents have always given her preference. At each milestone, she received more attention, a larger bedroom, and nicer outfits. I came to terms with it, concentrating on creating my own life rather than vying for their acceptance. We decided to get married on June 15th of this year after my fiancé proposed in January. We issued official invites in February and saved the dates in August. Everyone in the family, including my sister and dad, sent in an RSVP for the venue, caterer, photographer, DJ, and flowers. We paid non-refundable deposits. Everything was in place. Last month, suddenly, on June 15th, my sister said that she would be throwing a second anniversary celebration. Given that August marks her wedding anniversary, I was perplexed. I anticipated an apology for the confusion when I contacted to inquire about the problem with my wedding date. "Well, it's not like it's a big deal," she shouted at me instead. "Simply reschedule your date." I was taken aback. I gently clarified that we had extended invites months prior and made payments totaling thousands of dollars. Since all of our suppliers were reserved, we would lose all of that money if we changed the date. The bustle of attempting to rearrange things with only a few weeks left is another factor. She hung up on me in response. I assumed my folks would see how absurd this was. I phoned them in the hopes of receiving assistance. "It's just one day for you, but this is an important milestone for Olivia," my mother said. Instantly siding with my sister, my dad immediately jumped in and stated, "My sister's celebrations take priority because she puts effort into maintaining relationships," indicating that I don't when I pointed out that it wasn't even her actual anniversary day. From there, the discussion deteriorated. They acknowledged that they would be attending her fictitious anniversary celebration rather than my wedding. My dad said that he had already informed Olivia that they would attend, and that it would be unjust to alter the arrangements at this time, utterly disregarding the fact that they had sent an RSVP for my wedding months prior. I was so shocked by what was occurring that I sobbed as I hung up the phone. I had trouble sleeping that night. My own parents' decision to forego my wedding in favor of a celebration that didn't even need to take place on that particular day kept coming to mind. My fiancé advised me to speak with another family member who could help me reason with them. The next morning, I made an IRL 75M call to my grandfather. Despite his own health problems, he has always been there for me. Even though it would be a 3-hour journey from his house, he had previously indicated that he would attend our wedding despite having a heart attack last year and being cautious about travel. Grandpa Earl was incensed when I told him what had happened. He didn't understand why my parents would decide to go instead, or why my sister would plan her party on the day of my wedding. He stated he would speak with my parents about their choice, and that he would attend my wedding no matter what. He told me something I was unaware of throughout our talk. Over the years, he had amassed a sizable fortune through astute real estate investments. He informed me that he intended to give my sister, parents, and myself sizable inheritances. Their actions revolted him so much that he indicated he might change his mind. I told him it wasn't required and that I just appreciated his help. After I spoke with Grandpa Earl, my mother called me 4 days later. Her voice was very different from what we had been saying. She informed me that they had changed their minds and would now be attending my wedding. When she said that families should be together for significant occasions, she gave the impression that they were doing me a great favor. They didn't acknowledge the harm caused by their earlier choice or offer an apology. My sister contacted later that day to announce that she was delaying her anniversary celebration. She said it wasn't because it clashed with my wedding, but rather because some people couldn't make it. Once more, there was no apology or acknowledgement that it was improper to plan a fictitious anniversary celebration on the day of my wedding. Neither of them brought up any inheritance or Grandfather Earl. Their abrupt change of heart seemed strange. I asked Grandpa Earl if he had mentioned anything to them the next time I spoke with him. He said that after hearing how they handled me, he had phoned my father and said he was reevaluating his will. At that point, everything made sense. They didn't genuinely care about me or realize they were mistaken. They merely decided not to go to my wedding because they were afraid of losing their inheritance. I was very devastated. My fiancé and I spent the night discussing it, and he was just as repulsed by their actions. Since I knew their abrupt change of heart was motivated solely by money, I contacted my parents the next morning and urged them not to bother attending the wedding. My mom started weeping, and my dad accused me of being theatrical right away. Just days previously, she had told me clearly that they always intended to attend my wedding, but she said I was misinterpreting their intentions. "You've always been envious of me," my sister texted me. "Quit being such a useless burden to everyone who must put up with your pitiful fears." This was the last straw. I instantly blocked her number in a matter of hours. Members of my extended relatives began texting me. Without providing the whole narrative, it became evident that my parents were telling everyone that I had excluded them from my wedding out of jealousy and resentment. Despite my fiancé's support for any choice I make, I'm beginning to question my own abilities due to the pressure from my family. I feel like I'd be letting them walk all over me again if I allowed them in, but I also want to just let them in to prevent additional problems. They have demonstrated that they are more concerned with making money than with supporting me on one of the most significant days of my life. After learning that my family simply altered their views due to possible inheritance concerns, I would propose to forbid them from attending my wedding. 2 weeks have passed since my first post, and I would like to thank everyone for their support and comments. There are several misconceptions in the comments that I need to clear up. No, my grandfather's money is not what I desire. Before this incident, I had no idea that he had substantial funds. My fiancé and I both have solid jobs, but his is better. On our own, we're financially secure. For those who are curious, my sister purposefully planned her celebration for the day of my wedding. To be honest, this type of situation has occurred previously. She organized a family vacation during my high school graduation week, announced her engagement during my engagement party, and threw her college graduation party on my birthday. My parents often justified her actions by claiming that she was ecstatic or unaware of the conflict. However, this wedding scenario was the most obvious one to date. The problem worsened after I posted here. I was inundated with calls and texts from my relatives. Every day, often many times a day, my mother would call in tears. She would strike up a casual conversation before weeping uncontrollably about how I was hurting her feelings. If I couldn't find a reason to end the conversation, these calls would go on for hours. My sister became more and more antagonistic in her texts. She was trying to ruin my wedding, so I was astonished by how nasty she was being and didn't understand why she was so upset. My mother even tried to talk some sense into me by calling my future mother-in-law, who had always avoided getting involved in family strife. Fortunately, my fiancé's family has been very encouraging and hasn't put any pressure on me. The physical toll of the tension was mounting. I began experiencing anxiety attacks every time my phone rang, was unable to concentrate at work, and wasn't getting enough sleep. My supervisor invited me into his office to check on me after seeing a decline in my performance. I had to clarify that I was juggling family matters with my impending nuptials. Although he was understanding, he reminded me that I had to continue working. My fiancé saw me sobbing in the toilet at 3 a.m. after a particularly difficult night during which I was unable to sleep at all. He proposed that we could avoid them throughout the wedding, and that perhaps allowing them to attend would at least put an end to the pestering, even if I didn't want to confess it. He was right. Less than a week remained until the wedding, and I was at my breaking point. In defiance of my better judgment, I contacted my parents the next day and invited them to the wedding. I expressed my desire for the harassment to end and my hope that we might at least have a cordial relationship for a day, even if I didn't approve of the way they had treated me. My mother instantly stopped sobbing when I phoned them to inform them, and she responded, "Well, I'm glad you finally came to your senses." "Good," my father answered simply. "Families act in this way." I texted my sister to let her know she could come, but she didn't even bother to reply. They seemed entitled to have been there the entire time. I spent the days before the wedding concentrating on last-minute logistics and attempting to psychologically get ready to see my family, even though I had originally decided to miss it. Being aware of the circumstances, my bridesmaids pledged to step in if tensions arose. On the wedding day itself, my maid of honor even came up with a signal we could use in case I needed to be rescued from a talk with my family. I was excited to marry the love of my life and terrified to face my family when I woke up. To start the day off right, my bridesmaids brought champagne and brunch when they arrived early to assist with hair and beauty. As we prepared, they diverted my attention and kept me laughing. Not long after we finished applying cosmetics, my mother showed up at the bridal suite. She began critiquing the hairstylist's work right away, saying I ought to have picked a different look. Effortlessly, my maid of honor ushered my mother out of the room by stating that the photographer wanted to shoot some pre-ceremony pictures of just the bridesmaids and myself. Despite the stress, the ceremony itself was lovely. I scarcely saw my father at my side as I walked down the aisle, concentrating on my fiancé's expression. To avoid adding to the drama, we had agreed that he would walk me down the aisle, but we left out the customary "who gives this lady" section in the ceremony. Despite his doctor's severe advice not to go because of his heart condition, Grandpa Earl persisted on going and sat in the front row. I was able to go through the ceremony without considering my parents' and sister's actual reasons for attending the reception, since I saw him there, grinning triumphantly. Whenever Grandpa Earl was alone himself, I couldn't help but see my sister and parents lingering about him. They were abnormally attentive, constantly bringing him beverages, showed him pictures on their phones, and hardly acknowledged me unless other guests were there. Their actions were so blatantly clear that I later received comments from a number of visitors. My father gave a quick toast that was less about celebrating our marriage and more about forgiveness and family harmony. For us, it was more of a publicity stunt than a sincere declaration of joy. Throughout the talks, my sister sat at her table, appearing bored and glancing at her phone. Whenever I could, I spent the evening concentrating on my new husband, our friends, and Grandpa Earl. My grandfather and I sat, and he told us stories about his early years and offered us heartfelt and humorous marital advice. My reception's high point was those moments. Despite his health issues, he stayed longer than anticipated and declared that he would never miss a celebration with his beloved grandchild. The next day, we departed for our honeymoon, a 2-week vacation to Hawaii that we had been saving for and organizing since we were engaged. We really wanted to get away from all the family drama. A week following our honeymoon return, my mom called to see how I was doing. Following a little conversation regarding the wedding and honeymoon, she reached the true motive behind her phone call. At the wedding, your grandfather treated us with a certain amount of coldness. Would it be possible for you to speak with him? Put it in a nice word for us, you know. I choose to be straightforward. Do you want me to persuade Grandpa Earl to keep you in his will? We did attend your wedding as you requested, she said after pausing. You owe us that much, in my opinion. They were merely there to safeguard their legacy, I told her. After first selecting the fictitious anniversary celebration hosted by my sister, I informed her that I would not assist them in controlling my grandfather. She didn't answer and hung up. My dad phoned next right away. Hostile. This is how you pay us back for everything we've done for you, by making your grandpa hostile to us. He lost it, and hung off the phone when I brought up their lifetime preference for my sister. My sister sent a straightforward SMS. You're a self-centered jerk. You will be sorry if you cause us to lose our inheritance. All of their numbers were blocked by me. A few days prior to the wedding, I had unblocked my sister. Despite their treatment of me, my husband has been quite supportive and has reminded me that I owe them nothing. Before deciding on the next course of action pertaining to my family, we decided to give ourselves some time to analyze everything. Second update, I haven't posted in a month. A few of commentators questioned why I hadn't contacted my family earlier. To be honest, I kept expecting that they would see how they were treating me and that things would become better. Letting go of relatives is more difficult than you would imagine. Anew the years, there were both positive and negative experiences, even when they continuously caused you pain, and those memories made it difficult to start anew. My family blocked their numbers and then sought other means to reach me. My mother began sending me emails every day, swinging between allegations of anger and guilt trips. My father had already made 3 calls to my place of employment. The receptionist was instructed by my supervisor to stop answering his calls. One evening when we were away, he showed up to our apartment and left a letter requesting that I call him for a crucial family matter. On social media, my sister made ambiguous but clear accusations that I was manipulating and unappreciative. She even contacted our common acquaintances to let them know that I needed help for mental health problems. Fortunately, instead of trusting her, these friends knew me well enough to verify with me personally. When they couldn't get through to me, they began phoning my husband. He first made an effort to be kind by stating that I needed time and would get in touch with them when I was ready. He had to block their numbers eventually. 2 after my sister sent him threatening texts, and my father phoned him at work. They even got in touch with my high school and college pals, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in a long time. These pals sent me perplexed texts, inquiring about my well-being and what was happening. Having to explain the issue to people who were no longer close to me was embarrassing. On a Saturday morning, my parents unexpectedly arrived at our flat. We didn't answer the door even though we were at home. Before departing, they knocked for about 20 minutes while standing in the corridor. Later, our neighbors inquired about our well-being, saying they had heard my parents say they might need to contact the police for a wellness check because they were concerned about my mental health. All of a sudden, they looked eager to speak with me. Ironic, considering their initial lack of interest in my wedding. Their actions simply served to reaffirm that I had made the proper choice in ending our communication. Grandpa Earl phoned to see how I was doing at this period. We discussed everything that had transpired for a long time. I learned something from him that clarified the matter. After the wedding, my sister and dad had set up a meeting with him. Instead of offering an apology for their actions, they spent the whole hour inquiring about his financial plans and will. He said that they made no effort to conceal their objectives. Your sister wanted to know whether I had thought about creating a trust for her children, if she has any in the future, and your father especially inquired about the inheritance distributions, insinuating that an advance on the bequest would be beneficial. Your mother mentioned her intentions to remodel their home. What pitiful, repulsive individuals. During our conversation, Grandpa Earl revealed that he had changed his will to exclude them completely and transfer their share to me since he was so angry about their actions. I informed him that I didn't feel comfortable with this and that he shouldn't let this circumstance influence such a significant decision. However, he maintained that it was his own choice. For years, I have observed how they have handled you. He claimed that the wedding industry was the last straw. The only person who comes to see me without expecting anything in return is you. Only when they are in need of money or suspect that I may be amending my will do the others call. I asked him not to share his choice with them just yet. I'm hoping for less drama. Despite his agreement, he stated that he was still going forward with the alterations. "We know what you did" was the subject line of an email my mother sent me 2 days after we spoke. The email's body accused me of using Grandpa Earl against them and threatened to sue me if I didn't make things right. Grandpa Earl had promised not to tell them, but nevertheless, they had learned of his choice. I contacted Grandpa Earl to inquire about the situation. He said that his assistant had inadvertently called my parents' house phone rather than his mobile phone to confirm the meeting after his lawyer had gotten in touch with him with inquiries regarding the world developments. There was enough information exchanged during that call for my parents to understand what was going on. After that, the hostility got worse, with people accusing me of controlling Grandpa Earl. I had poisoned my grandfather's mind against them, according to emails my mother sent. My sister called me a gold-digging serpent who betrayed her own family for financial gain in a social media post. Grandpa Earl laughed it off when I phoned to warn him about what they were saying. "They are free to speak anything they choose. You and I both know the truth," he added. "They are only displaying their own selves. My family is aware of our current address, so my husband and I talked about the possibility of moving. We began looking at alternative apartments in various areas, even though our lease wasn't up for another 6 months. If the harassment persisted or we felt insecure, a number of acquaintances volunteered to temporarily house us in their houses. In addition, I sought legal advice on the potential for a restraining order. She suggested keeping a record of every effort at communication and warned that if their actions persisted or worsened, we could be able to file harassment charges. Just in case, I began to keep a thorough record of every phone, email, text, and visit. My spouse was concerned about how I was being affected by this. I had lost weight due to stress and was having trouble sleeping. He recommended that we get away for a weekend in order to decompress. We thus reserved a tiny cottage in the mountains, almost 2 hours away from the city. We needed the respite from being on guard all the time. Update 3. My previous update was 2 weeks ago. After my parents arrived unexpectedly for the 3rd time, we installed the security cameras that many of you had requested. We purchased a tiny camera for the corridor outside our flat and a video doorbell for the front door. After we clarified the circumstances, our landlord gave his approval for the installation. The cameras were almost instantly helpful. The day following installation, my mother arrived, repeatedly ringing the doorbell and then yelling through the door when we didn't respond. The whole incident, including her threats to contact the police, was caught on camera. If I didn't put an end to this bullshit and speak to your family in a mature manner. 2 days later, my sister stopped by with her husband, who appeared uneasy about being there. After knocking more courteously, she began using her phone to take photographs of our door in the corridor. She said she was worried about me and was thinking of hiring a private investigator to check on me when a neighbor questioned what she was doing. After we briefly explained the problem to our neighbor, he threatened to contact building security if she didn't leave. I got legal docs in the mail yesterday. My parents and sister are suing me, saying that I used deceptive and undue influence to persuade Grandpa Earl to amend his will. They are requesting that the court provide them damages for mental suffering and declare any modifications to his will unlawful. It seemed unbelievable to me that they would go this far. I phoned Grandpa Earl right away since I was concerned about the impact this stress might have on his health. When I informed him that those naive rodents truly believed they could sue someone for their own terrible actions, he began to giggle, which surprised me. What a farce. No court will force me to give my money to anyone, he added, adding that he was of sound mind. I'd prefer not to. Do not be concerned. He clarified that when he amended his will, he had taken measures because he had expected something similar to occur. He had a thorough cognitive evaluation conducted by his physician, which he aced. Additionally, he had a notary public, and his attorney witnessed the signature. He wrote down his justifications for the adjustments, mentioning particular incidents of my sister's and parents' actions that worried him. Grandpa Earl had already gotten in touch with his lawyer and insisted on paying my legal fees. Later that day, I consulted with a lawyer who verified that, considering Grandpa Earl's mental capacity and the evidence of his justifications for amending his will, they effectively had no case. According to the attorney, these cases are rarely successful unless there is unmistakable proof of true fraud or decreased ability. Your grandfather has taken great care to safeguard his desires. Even though the legal procedure may take some time, I am certain that the lawsuit will be dismissed. The accusations in their complaint are the most upsetting aspect. When he ordered Grandpa Earl not to alter his will on my account, they were painting me as cunning and greedy. Even before this fight, they seldom ever visited my grandpa, despite their claims that I cut him off from the family. When all I did was tell him the truth about the wedding arrangements, they accused me of giving him misleading information about them. Even if it's obvious projection, seeing these charges in court records still stings. Going over the complaint, they were obviously desperate and struggling to make ends meet. Based on their own behavior, they were unable to understand that Grandpa Earl had come to this conclusion on his own. My spouse proposed filing a countersuit for harassment. But all I want is for this to end. Grandpa Earl's attorney anticipates a speedy dismissal of the lawsuit. So, instead of concentrating on counterattacks, we are concentrating on defense. He suggested that we keep track of any attempts at contact and refrain from interacting with them in any way that may be interpreted incorrectly. I didn't recognize the number that texted me the day after I got the lawsuit. A friend's phone was being used by my sister. It read, "You believe you're quite intelligent. Simply wait for the court to decide this. Everyone will see your true self." I banned that number too and didn't reply. Grandpa Earl's attorney is already working with us to prepare our response to the lawsuit. Although he cautions that it could take several months, he is certain that it will be settled in our favor. We are making every effort to continue our regular schedule in the interim. Even yet, it's challenging because of the ongoing tension that surrounds us. The last update. 3 months ago, the lawsuit against me was dropped. As Grandpa Earl's attorney had foreseen, the judge even prevented a full trial from taking place. Our request for summary judgment is granted. The court clearly said in her decision, after weighing all the information, that my sister and dad were unable to present any reliable proof of Grandpa Earl's decreased ability or improper influence. Grandpa Earl gave testimony on their behavior and his motivations for changing during the preliminary hearing. He was eloquent, perceptive, and obviously in complete control of his abilities. His thorough records of their conversations and the medical papers attesting to his cognitive health particularly pleased the court. The legal expenditures my sister and dad paid to pursue this unfounded action were extremely expensive. They employed a costly lawyer who, in spite of all the evidence to the contrary, seemed to keep telling them they were in a strong position. They believed they would not only nullify the wheel adjustments, but also obtain significant damages from me, based on what we learned from common connections. They were shocked when the lawsuit was dismissed. It seems that their lawyer had been dragging them along, taking fees even though he knew the case had no merit. After being reviewed, their case against him was dropped by the State Bar Association. My mother claimed in an email 2 weeks after they lost the lawsuit that their lawyer had defrauded them by promising them a win. She said that they were currently having financial difficulties after spending all of their resources on legal bills. She suggested that since I was now going to inherit Grandpa Earl's money, I would someday be able to afford to be giving. So she asked if I could find it in my heart to assist them. I didn't answer. My father phoned Grandpa Earl personally a few days later to request a loan till they were able to rebuild their finances. He attributed their financial difficulties on poor legal counsel instead of their own retaliatory behavior. My father responded "This is how you repay us, Grandpa?" when Grandpa Earl declined. "This was in response to all that we had done for you over the years," Earl informed him. "A restraining order will be the next legal measure taken if you get in touch with my granddaughter or me again." The following day, my father called again, not taking the threat seriously. Grandpa Earl sent a stop and desist letter to his lawyer instead of responding this time. They eventually stopped talking to him after that. Through a common acquaintance, my sister tried one final time to get in touch with me. In her communication, she expressed her desire to make amends and mend our friendship. Our acquaintance, who was fully aware of the story, asked if I would want to reply. I said no. I've discovered that my sister's approach to relationship mending typically entails me offering an apology for actions I didn't take wrong. We've had peace ever since. No more unexpected guests. No more friend messages. No more turmoil on social media. It appears that they have finally come to terms with the fact that their acts have long-term repercussions. Grandpa Earl's condition hasn't changed. We've become even closer since I go see him once a week. That's about all, I suppose. I appreciate you everyone reading and lending a hand.